Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Cannabis Accounting Podcast. Today I have with me Mei-Ling Campbell, the founder of Hired DAMA Consulting, a cannabis sales and strategy firm. But Mei-Ling, for those who don't know you, if you want to introduce yourself a little bit to the audience.
Hi, my name's Mei-Ling Campbell. Nice seeing everybody here. Well, I don't see anybody excuse Raymond, but hopefully everybody. I have my own consulting company and I work with different brands in the space, helping them scale, usually asset-light brand, but I help them scale and grow sales strategically in multiple states. My background is in CPG sales. I worked on Marlboro for almost, 20 years in numerous different sales positions. I led multi-level sales teams. He did some trade marketing work, digital marketing, moved around a bunch. So, constantly on the road, living the sales life, but transitioned into cannabis back in 2019, where I got the opportunity to work for Steezy, and I ran their expansion markets for 3 years. And it was just such a tremendous learning experience, being just working with such a great brand at the start of really the growth of their expansion. So I ran their expansion markets for 3 years out in the East Coast. And then when we parted ways in 2022, I decided to start out my own consultancy and, really haven't looked back that I've been fortunate really to partner with some really great brand in the space and just working with them long term as a fractional sales director.
Nice, nice. And like I always try to joke, it's like the cannabis industry is like a young startup industry. And so like a lot of people cut their teeth outside of the industry. It's like you can't get 20 years of experience in an industry that's like less than 5 or 10 years old in most markets. And so
Yeah.
thinking through that, and like obviously Marlboro, it's like a really well-known brand. It's because I still think of like the Marlboro Man. And like I'd have some uncles that like they had like Marlboro leather jackets, like the red and the
Oh
black with the
yeah.
white. It's like the colors,
100%.
you know what it is, you know what it
Yeah, the
means.
song or just in the imagery. I mean, definitely there is power in a brand, right? And I think in cannabis, you can be vertical, you can spend a lot of money into cultivation, but at the end of the day, I think it's the brand that's going to live on, and how a brand speaks to the consumers and how they go to market in a sustainable, profitable way. I think is the key to success for and the differentiation for brand.
And that was kind of, and that makes sense. That was kind of a question I was going to ask, like learning from, a global powerhouse brand. What were some of the things that you learned outside of cannabis that you were able to bring into Steezy kind of in your first, step into the cannabis industry? And then what were some things that once you got into the cannabis industry, you're like, okay, that's not really applicable anymore.
Well, pretty much everything I thought was applicable wasn't. I mean, going from corporate CPG to sleazy was quite a significant change. To put it lightly, I mean, uh, I went in with a lot of grandiose ideas of how we could, build trade programs, this and that, the other. But this was 2019. The industry just
Mhm.
wasn't ready for that, especially so. And so it just I had to set everything I knew aside and learn from scratch, learn about the product. I mean, I was always a consumer, and actually, that's why I went in. I've been consuming for such a long time. It just seemed like the natural progression. But it was. I had to take a step back from everything I thought I knew, and just really learn about cannabis, learn about the cannabis culture, learn about the consumer. I mean, I was a consumer, but looking at it from different lens. Learning about it from the lens of Steezy just really gave me an interesting perspective, right? Just and then once I had a better understanding of the industry, all the different nuances, state by state nuances, mind you, because there's definitely a lot of variables by state. Then I was better able to apply all the things I learned about from the CPG world, and it was really more about infrastructure, right? How do you build infrastructure? How do you build progress or process? How do you interview, hire, and train a sales team? Those were the things that I learned in my CPG world that I was able to apply on the cannabis side, but only after I really understood the industry, So that was kind of the transition there.
No, that makes sense. That makes sense. Because every industry does have nuances. It's like every industry does have markets and brands. Every industry has accounting, financial reporting, but like there's little nuances to each one. And but like once you know them, then it kind of becomes just like, now we can play. It's like, all right, cool. Now I know like where the rules, where the out of bounds lines are and how to score points. All right, now we can
Yeah,
get to playing the
and
game. With
100%.
that in mind, kind of like talking through expansion, obviously like Steezy is a unique, company where it's a multi-state operators, so they're in multiple markets. And I know you work with other asset like brands getting into new markets. So I guess just thinking through the new market perspective, like when a brand is entering a new market, new, which to us is like states, but like what is like the first bottleneck that shows up when trying to expand to some of these one? Is it just literally the bottleneck is there's not enough sales to pull the product through? Is it there's too much sales and we don't have enough product? So where do you see these initial bottlenecks?
I mean, I would say every step of the process, there's issues to solve, right? So I think it starts at the beginning when you're trying to even find a partner. I've always said a good partner can make or break you, or a state partner can make or break you as a brand. They can either be a good partner, work with you, give you the biomass that you need, produce the products as you need to spec, give you a production schedule so you know what's coming down the pipeline, help you plan your inventory so you can achieve the sales goals that you need. Like the for an asset like brand, at least those are the kind of things that I think help a brand succeed. And then there's other things that kind of get in the way of that, not having insights into or visibility into production, not having any sales reports. So you don't know where you stand or where your product is going. There's little things I think that, um, you know, it's a win-win situation for a brand to really work well with the distributor to get their products to market, but it takes a lot of planning, right? So,
Nope, that makes sense. That makes sense. And it's becoming more commonplace, like co-manufacturing and partnerships where like 2019, it was like, well, everybody had capital. So it's like, get the license, get the real estate, we'll build it ourselves in the state market we want to be in. Then as like money got smarter, capital got tighter, it's like, okay, and speed still matters. It's like, it's
yeah,
actually a lot faster to just let them fight it out, get the license, get the real estate. Well, we're building current market and, already has open markets. Then we just roll up underneath their license. Um, so that makes a lot of sense. But I guess like once they've secured the partner, they know what market they're going into, they get the first few big purchase orders from their distributors or the retail doors. But after that, what breaks next? So like once they kind of get those initial purchase orders, how do they make sure they keep getting these purchase orders?
yeah. I think a lot that's part of the plan, right? Is the understanding how to get into the dispensary, educate, and get in from the buyer's perspective, educate the budtenders, educate the consumer, start working on sell through and pull through. So then you get that reorder, and then it's just the ripple from there. But I think it's always important to have boots on the ground, to have that education component with the budtenders and the consumers, and to just, maintain visibility as a brand in any given state. That is hard. It is hard to do that, especially when you're in so many states as a brand.
Right, right. Um, Well, then I guess just kind of like focusing on partnerships and co-manufacturers or co-packers. I guess what are some like questions or things that you think through when vetting partners? It's like obviously you want them to have been there a while, have the chops to stay in business, be profitable partners, but like all that's kind
Yeah.
of table stakes or like expected. But like from your like nuanced perspective, like what are some things that we could do to kind of vet partners before we, start working with them?
I mean, I think there's a number of things to understand in terms of what their strengths and opportunities are. And, it's like buying a house, right? There's not that one perfect house, right? You can search for one, but at the end of the day, it's just like, what are
Sure.
the key metrics that you're searching for? And then what's fixable, right? Or what can you work with? And so in terms of finding a partner, from my lens, it's about understanding their strengths and opportunities so that you can, as a brand, fill in the gaps, right? Or work within their strength, leverage their strengths, and then where they have gaps, fill in the gaps as you need as a brand. Um, so I think that's where I would approach it because there is no right or wrong, or there's just no perfect partner from that perspective.
No, that makes sense. That makes sense. And then kind of switching back, yeah, because I guess like on the partnerships, I've been thinking through this as well, but like, what do you think is the best relationship of like who owns sales? It's like obviously if you're getting into a new market, you have a co-manufacturer that's
Yeah.
making your product. They have a sales team, they're making other people's products. So they have a network of salespeople. So is it like the state partner that they're supposed to drive the sales, or is it, the brand from wherever their headquarters are supposed to drive sales? So I guess kind of from that perspective, like who do you think should own sales and like what's the best way to drive sales for some of these asset light
No,
brands? I'm
that's a
thinking in.
real honestly, that's a really solid question. And I would say it depends. Sometimes the distributor wants to own the relationship. And then sometimes, they want the brand to step in and support with sales where maybe they don't have a relationship. So I think it's just it comes down to communication between the two groups, and collaboration. Because at the end of the day, as long as there's a sale, everybody wins, right? So but it's also something that should be worked into the term, right? Into the licensing agreement in terms of who's handling sales. Um, so that just kind of depends. And it depends too on the distributor if they have a sales team or not, whether or not it can be used, because not all partners may or may not have a sales team. So it just depends.
Yeah, because I would say that's kind of like what I've noticed is like as the industry matures and sophisticates into just like any other industry, it's like manufacturers are really good at manufacturing. They know the equipment, they know how to get the products out, they know how to get the
Mhm.
products out at time, they know how to get the raw materials in and the labor in just the right quantity that it's still profitable. But they're not a brand or a CPG company. Whereas like cannabis,
Mhm.
we just got in this bad habit of like everybody's CPG. We all do everything. We all grow it, we
Yeah.
turn it into products, we sell it. I'm a branding. It's like, no, you're a farmer. It's like I don't think you should think that you're really, really good at branding because there's people like a Mei-Ling or other people with like all they do are sales and branding and biz dev. You're just really good at growing weed or turning it into like a good product. And so I think
Yeah. That's
it's going to become more common of like co-manufacturer. You want to go into a market, figure out who can produce your product. And obviously it's like interstate opens up at some point in the future, if or when it's just going to be more of that, where it's like, no, we manufacture like one location and we ship to all the
yeah.
different markets, and
Yeah.
that's how business is done. Um,
Yeah, but I mean, from a brand standpoint too, it does make sense to have one face to the brand to push your brand, right? Because even if the distributor has multiple brands, for say, like it's hard to get a share of mind, right? If they're having to represent 5 or 10 brands, right? Why would they push your brand more than these other 5 brands that they're also selling? And so from that respect, it is incredibly valuable for a brand to have their own salesperson to help represent that brand, to push that brand in front, into front of mind. But the math has to math to pay for that salary. And so that therein lies the struggle, right? Because I've seen some brands start too early, put in a bunch of salespeople before they bring in the revenue to justify that spend. And so that's where it can quickly start to get a little backwards and a little challenging to maintain. So that's where the funding comes in. They need to have funding. Oh,
No, for sure, for sure. And I think that's kind of it is the thing where it's like the manufacturers are going to manufacture, the brands are going to drive sales of their branded product because I think of it like somebody told me like Coca-Cola doesn't rely on the gas stations to sell their Coca-Cola products. They're a brand, they have their own sales and marketing team that does this. They just use convenience stores and gas stations as a distribution center for their products, but like they're not relying on BP Mobile's marketing team to move their products. And I think cannabis is coming around to that as we sophisticate and mature. um, with that in mind, you brought up a good point with the capital, so might as well talk about it because I love talking about all things capital. It's like it's a capital intensive industry. And so I guess kind of thinking through the capital side of expanding to new markets, and this is just a genuine question. Do they like calculate how much they think it's going to cost to get into this market profitably? And so then we're going to allocate resources there. Or do they kind of already have an operating budget and they're like, all right, we know what we're going to spend. Now we're going to start putting some of that focus and that budget towards a new market. So I guess like how do they kind of calculate the cost to get into new markets? Because there is like multiple markets they could go after. So what makes one market more of a more desirable than others?
sorry, dog
No
barking.
worries.
Oh man.
No, no, it's in this podcast. So
I think it's all very much highly dependent upon the budget that's available for the brand, right? How much money do they have to play with to expand? It can be as little as they want, as they need it to be, and it's going to be as much as they want it to be. Quite frankly, it does. It just whatever that dollar amount is, learning how to play within those guidelines and how to best wisely spend that money for the maximum ROI is, I think, is the more important question. Um, yeah, because I've seen I've seen a number of different ways of approaching it, right? And so it just there's no one size fits all an answer for that, unfortunately. There's just too many
no
variables.
wrong answers here, Mei-Ling. There's no wrong answers here. We're
Yeah.
just so no, that makes sense because everything is a little bit nuanced. Kind of switching gears to leadership, just seeing that like you worked with some big companies, some companies doing some really interesting things. So I mean, I do just like companies are ran by leaders. It's just like the nature of the beast. It's like sports teams have leaders, businesses have leaders, and like there's a lot of
100%.
people on the team, but they're not all leaders. And so I've always just kind of thought that leadership is like an interesting, philosophical thing to study. But like kind of just even from like Marlboro down to Steezy to now you're your own business owner, like what are some lessons you've learned from leadership? Like what were some, leaders that you had that like were some, all right, I'm not going to do that. And then what were some lessons around leadership where you're like, okay, I like their approach or their perspective to how they like manage their team?
Yeah. I mean, the a leader of any organization has so much responsibility, right? In terms of motivating their entire team and just being the face of the company. So I think they just have a lot on their shoulders, right? In this world, especially with everything going on. But I think I've seen really great leaders come through with great positivity, just always being transparent with their team, authentic, and just never talking down to them, and just just being really supportive and just whatever you need to succeed as a person and to support the company. And that's I've seen some great leaders do that. I mean, we've all had some terrible bosses, right? Throughout our careers. So really it's just about treating people with respect. And that so I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, right. It's like so many things can be solved with just respectful communication. You're like, I mean, business is inherently hard. So yeah, there are problems we need to solve, but it's like
Yeah.
how we go about solving them is like how we live our business.
I mean, everybody gets frustrated, right? It's tough. I mean, but every step forward, there's two steps back, especially in this industry. It's it's a constant dance. And so I get it. I mean, I lose my temper sometimes too. I get it. It can be hard, but yeah, I think that you can be a good leader, and help train and develop and really mentor people along the way. And I think that's what this good leader does.
And I like the idea of remaining positive. It's like just because like you're leading, so like you got to have confidence in the future, which that'll like should drive some positivity. It's like if you're like, dude, I don't even know if I'm going to be here in 5 years. It's
Yeah.
like that'll like permeate into your team. So you definitely need to be positive. Thinking through kind of obviously like just like you were saying around 2022 is when you kind of like went out on your own with Hired DAMA Consulting, but so you just like kind of recently went through this perspective, like was a employee for many years, had a great successful career, and now I'm starting over as a business. Not starting over, but like you kind of are. And it's like,
Oh, yeah.
and we do the same thing. Like we take accounting and finance people, CPAs of 20 years, and it's like, that's great. You have really good experience as accounting and finance. Now we're going to teach you how to be a business owner. There's slightly different skills. Usually it's around sales and marketing, but they already know how to, they're going to sell accounting services. They know how to do accounting, but like there's a lot of other things to learn. So I guess like from that perspective, like starting your business recently, like what are some lessons that you learned kind of going out on your own? And just if you could pass on any lessons to young entrepreneurs in the cannabis industry, of which there's many, just kind of around the mindset of starting your own business and being a business owner.
Yeah. So I mean, I gotta say, I was incredibly scared when I first started in 2022. I had always worked for somebody, you know what I mean? Like I worked my way up the corporate ladder. I always had a paycheck, every twice a month, kind of deal, insurance, all the things. And then for it to like go away, and then all of a sudden I'm responsible for paying myself. I had to do like my own like the taxes and like I'm just so fortunate. My father-in-law is an accountant, so I had somebody on my side to like really help me through the process. For paid through with love and hugs. But like so that was amazing. Um
I have
and
been that CPA for my family members, small businesses.
yeah, I bet. So I was super fortunate from that perspective. But I think the biggest challenge and the biggest learning is just to shoot your shot. I mean, it was and find your mentors in your network. I mean, those those couple of things. I think when I first got started, I it was talking to people to really validate that there was a need for my services and what I could offer. But then also talking to those people that had done that before, like kind of gone on their own and started consulting and done their own thing. That gave me the strength to know that, hey, I can do it, right? It's been done. And I have a lot of people to kind of help me through kind of and learn throughout the way. And then also having the accountant that I did to also kind of helped me through certain processes, which was super helpful.
Well, that makes sense. So if you're starting a business, make sure you have a good accountant. Um,
Yes. Thank you guys.
and what about
And
among,
mentors. Yeah. Mentors in a network. Yes.
and that definitely helps, even if it's just like kind of on the mindset piece of like, yeah, you're in year 3 or 4, it's gonna be pretty tough, but like year 5, it gets a little bit easier. And it's just like that's just kind of the nature of a few things. And so, no, I definitely we rely on mentors and love them all. Kind of thinking through just like betting on yourself as a business owner, like sales is always kind of like the main concern. Like they say all these other words, but they
Oh,
actually just mean is enough money going to come in to cover the money that's going out to leave me with profit to hopefully retire and pay for my kids' college. So I guess kind of starting out, like what was your thought process around sales and like how to drive sales? Because it's like you're kind of on the branding and sales side. So how did you apply some of that to your own business?
yeah. It's a really good question.
And again, it's candid
Yeah.
conversations, like no wrong
Yeah.
answers here.
Yeah. You know, I think it was just it was the first thing was just making sure I was making enough coming in, right? So finding those first couple of clients,
Yeah.
getting my feet wet, and then finding that I could actually add value and that they were adding to my hour was was gave me the strength to know that I was at least going going in the right direction. And there are little things that happen in the beginning too, where I could like sense where maybe I was presenting something that wasn't hitting. I would actually go and ask for feedback. Hey, I noticed that you know the strategy or the solution I was presenting wasn't hitting the mark, and then we would talk through it. And then I came back and presented something else. They're like, "Oh, that was great." And so and so just having the strength to ask for feedback and learning along the way, was helpful, and then, I'm feel like I'm losing the point of the question, sorry.
No,
Um,
no, it was yeah, it was just around like kind of how you thought through sales and whatnot at the beginning. And some of it is it's just
yeah.
vetting that this
Yeah, I
service
mean,
is needed.
it's just and then it's just making sure I continuously add value, and then understanding, where the gaps are with the client that I or the company that I'm working with, and then just helping them grow, right? Whatever it is, if it's leveraging my network, right? Leveraging what all the different experiences that I've had throughout, my prior careers, whatever I can draw upon to help solve whatever problem is in front of me, with whatever client I'm working with, that's kind of been always my motto. And even though I grew up in sales, right, I've actually been pretty terrible about marketing myself. I'm not a marketer. I'm actually like a more sales and strategist and sales infrastructure kind of person. I'm not a creative. I've been pretty terrible about marketing myself as a company, I think, at least for where I sit. But I feel like where I was able to find success, and the reason why I haven't maybe had to do so much of that is just by I've had the same few clients since the beginning, and just really sticking with them long term, and just finding
Well,
ways.
that's writing
I mean, they
value.
just they keep me around like this. Like,
Yeah.
I don't even. I've been just super lucky, right, to find some
No,
really good
no, no.
groups
It's not
where
just
I
luck.
could where I could add value. So, um, yeah, and then just kind of keeping my eyes, my ears open in terms of um who might need support, but it's always organic, right? I'm never out there like constantly looking for clients. I'm just out there to build my network and see who's out there, what brands are there, what cultivators are out there. I'm This is such an interesting growing business. Like everybody's got a story, right? And so it's just knowing that, and sometimes I just happen to meet people, and then they know somebody, and it just happened, right? In terms of once people find out how I can help a brand or help a company, it just yeah.
No, I like that. I
It's just
like that kind of.
I get calls from, but they're like, "Well, I'm not sure how I heard of you, but I just was curious if you could help." And so, and then we just kind of talk through it, and here's a project, or here's how I can maybe help, and then we start small, and then we go from there, and that's usually how it starts. And I've been lucky to have a handful of really good clients
Nice, nice.
and good
Really
brands,
fun.
really. Because yeah, I love working with really great brands, and I just really fortunate to work with some good ones.
Nice, nice. And obviously, like you're meeting your clients where they're at, adding value over time. That's what they keep you around for. So yeah, you're lucky, but like I can see through it. You're also talented. And with that in mind, kind of it that phrase of like meeting them where they're at and like kind of where they are in their growth cycle. Like, how do you think through it, Mei-Ling? Because like from our perspective, we have 4 phases. we have pre-revenue, post-revenue, profitable, scaling, and pretty much every cannabis business, regardless of license type or location, goes through this process. And there's a
Yeah.
few different things that we solve, for accounting and finance perspective when they're pre-revenue. Once they're post-revenue and fully operational, we have some other additional things that we need to solve. And then once we're trying to scale it, there's, additional things that we're trying to solve or keep an
Yeah.
eye on. So how do you think through the growth cycles of a business? Like from your perspective, like, is there certain milestones where it's like, okay, now the company is in this milestone. Now we got to start solving this process
Yeah,
for
no, for
self-development.
sure. I think my sweet spot really is where is when they're post revenue, and then starting to expand, and then as they're expanding and scaling, I'm there throughout every step of the way, right? Because I can help strategize, I can help implement, and then I can scale, to the point, where, yeah, because I'm helping them scale and hire additional people to grow in various states.
No, that makes sense. Like that post that's the kind of our sweet spot too. Is like there's more to account for when they're actually like buying inventory and selling it or making it and selling
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
more to do. And then, yeah, and then
yeah.
it's like people think like once sales start, the company's automatically profitable, and it's like, oh no, they can be doing
No, but
millions in sales and
you
still
also can't
grow.
sell what you don't have. So it starts with, having inventory, understanding the product life cycle, and the production schedule. And so there's the whole supply and demand planning aspect of sales, that goes into it as well.
No, that's interesting because I originally saw that like really come to fruition in New York where there was just like not enough doors to like pull the product through. And then in Minnesota, we're dealing with it on the kind of the other side where it's like I have some clients doing retail, but they're like, we can only get so much product because there's only so much available right now because they're in that like startup phase where like some of them are operational, some of them are not. And so, yeah,
Oh,
you can only sell what you have. And that takes a while to produce because we literally need to grow it at this living organism just to get to like the starting raw
yeah.
material.
Yeah, and it just all of that can change at a blink of an eye too. I mean, from a cultivation standpoint, I worked with cultivators before where, yeah, one room goes down, through for whatever issue or whatever accident that happened, and then there goes like an entire half month's worth of profit. There's just so much that can go wrong, and yeah, it can be very like intensive for sure.
No, for sure. And like I was like, I know Massachusetts just went through a big snowstorm and like that. Yes, like you can have a snowstorm that just wipes out power for the
Yeah.
entire area. And if you didn't
Or
have a
you yeah.
generator, plants were without light for a day or two. And it's like, that's going to hurt everything.
Yeah. Or Jersey where you have everything put on administrative hold, and then that's just I'm sure that's a sensitive subject right now. That there's yeah, anything can happen at a blink of an eye.
And that's kind of, yeah, that's almost as a unique thing to the industry. It's like there's the problems we know about that we're going to solve because it's part of our weekly or daily
Yeah.
plan. But then there's always going to
Yeah.
be something that comes down the pipeline of like, oh, that's going to change things.
Yeah.
Um, so no, for sure, for sure. Well, you've been in the industry since 2019, so kind of just taking a like a step back in a macro kind of lens, like how would you say the industry has changed from 2019 to 2026? It's like a half decade. Obviously, like from my perspective, I just come at it from like the accounting and finance, and it's like, oh, I was there from like 2015 to 2021, 22, where it's like everybody was growing, capital was pretty excited about the industry. Then obviously everybody saw in 21, 22. There's like an 80% reduction in capital in the industry, rough estimates depending on who you listen to. And so it's just like it has drastically changed from 2015 to 2025, but just even in the last 5 years. And some of it's really good too. Like new markets are opening up. There's like more of a global conversation. But from your perspective, Mei-Ling, how would you say the industry has changed from like first and early 2019, 2020 till now?
Okay. Yeah, there's definitely been a lot of changes. Just I mean, just even within the US. I'm gonna set aside hemp for now because I don't really work within the hemp market. I'm more in the regulated THC side. But just in the last 6+ years, um, my goodness, the changes just really all the new states that have come online, and then the cycle of each state as they mature, right? Seeing the growth when the states first come online, the growth and the it's hard to get biomass and the high prices, and then as depending on the state, if there's more licenses coming on, more biomass, it's just a cycle, and then it's interesting to see that cycle progress. And how it progresses depending on the number of licenses that's in the state. depending on if it's limited license or not, the MSOs that are in the state. There's just, there's a lot of, a lot more nuance, I think, now too within that. And then globally, of course, I mean, there's so much going on the global scale. That's like a whole nother, we could talk about that for days. But yeah, I mean, domestically, yeah, it's nice to see though, so many states being being rec now and also medical. So it's just hopefully one of these days we have a complete not reschedule, descheduling of cannabis, and I think that's really gonna move the needle.
Yeah, that will definitely move the needle. And it is interesting because the industry does become more nuanced. As time progresses, it's like you used to just be able to grow product, get it to market, and it'll move. And it's the main bottleneck was like, how do we get licenses? Like we got to get licenses, we got to find
Oh,
green zone real estate. Like that was kind of a thing. And because all you had to do was like get that, and then you could grow the product, get it to market. But now because there's so much competition, there's price
yeah.
compression. You like wholesale isn't 2,500 a pound anymore, and like that's all
No.
the way down to everything. And so
Yeah.
like everything is like we're trying to do more with less profit margin. So yeah, you do got to be a little bit more dialed in. Um, Kind of with that in mind, because I want to be respectful of your time here, just kind of thinking more towards the future a little bit. Um, I do want to circle back on a few things, but just like kind of thinking through the next 5 years of the cannabis industry. What has you like concerned about the future of the cannabis industry, both domestically and globally, and what has you excited about it?
Yeah. I'm really excited about the global market and what that could bring. I'm jealous you get to go to ICBC. But I think domestically, I'm really excited about seeing more states come online. I know there's just so many. I know a lot of people are excited about hemp, but because there's just so many variables, um, I'm more of a wait and see kind of person, and I will focus on the regulated THC side because at least I know the state nuances well enough to how to play that game, and not play in the constantly shifting regulatory landscape that's hemp. But from can THC regulated standpoint, more states coming online, more price compression. I think you'll see more of that, but I think you'll also see just kind of based on the last year, a lot more mergers of brands, consolidation. I think it's going to continue to happen. Some too depends on if rescheduling actually happens. I don't know that it will. I don't know that I want it to. I'm definitely more a proponent of descheduling. Um, and also because I support state regulated brands, and I feel like we just need to be able to get into the consumer's hands. Um, and I'm not sure how rescheduling is going to impact that.
No, I'm right there with you. It's like obviously descheduling's the goal, but I'm just like progress is progress. And so it's like, I don't know, even if they can like get it from schedule 1 to schedule 3, it at least gets more people thinking about it. Because we live in this world, so we think everybody lives. It's like,
Yeah,
isn't cannabis top of mind for you? And they're like, no, there's like a war in Ukraine, there's tariffs, there's
yeah.
like
There's
all
a
this
lot
other
going on. I mean, I
things.
think the good thing about rescheduling is that it will open the door for more research. However, I don't know how pharma is going to take a plant that we can get in the market and put it through their pharmaceutical processes, right? So I think it's just going to be interesting to see how that plays out in the certain category that they'll cover. I know there's a lot of talk, and I'm not gonna I'm for me, it's just more about whatever happens, how do you play that game? It's not so much trying to predict what's gonna happen. It's completely out of our control. But it's just more about understanding what might happen, and having contingency plans, to know how to maneuver regardless of how it plays out.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Um, Kind of one question I had was just about the nuance of kind of some of these products, some of these like asset light brands. Um, like, is there any product that like lends itself better for a brand? Because I kind of just think of the major SKUs. You got flour, vapes, concentrates, edibles, beverages. And from your experience, like, is there any SKUs that like, oh, this is much more of an asset light play, whereas like this other SKU, it's like, nah, you kind of want to build the infrastructure yourself for that one.
Yeah, I mean, I think anything distillate based is pretty easy to scale. Anything distillate and botanical terp space. But anytime you get into like a flower Flower brands, I think, is harder to scale because it's hard for quality control, unless you have genetic, like, and it's also like, if you're a brand, you're a flower brand, you're getting your flower from somewhere. So unless you have like strain exclusivity, you might be sharing the same flower from that another brand might have. Is the how do you set yourself apart as a brand, right? If you're a flower brand, unless you have genetics that you're bringing in your own genetics. And so I would say distillate based brands. So vape, edibles, tinctures, um,
I think it's kind of downstream from yeah, oil of some kind. No, that makes sense. That makes sense. Because as soon as I asked the question, I kind of solved my question. Or I was like, no, that makes sense. Because anything like flower based, like it's the terpenes are the flower, you know. But once you get into like more refined products, it's like, nah, you're really just kind of buying oil or biomass and turning it into what you need. But I asked you a lot of questions today, Mei-Ling, and I'm sure like you know, ask a lot of questions to potential clients that you're working with, and or even current clients of yours. But I guess like what are more questions you wish people asked you, either clients or cannabis industry professionals?
ooh.
This one I kind of just thought of. I know I threw you a curveball this time.
How like, ooh, I it's like that one. Uh, I don't know. That's a
Could
good
be
one.
about business, can be about life. I'm just throwing it out there.
Um, it's just more about what's new, right? What's new with me, because there's always something. Well, it's always something. It's not just life. It's always something's different every day.
All right.
Either a snowstorm, a snowstorm in DC that they can't clear. Yeah, or like product in Jersey that you can't get because it's on hold. Uh,
Yep, yep. There's always something coming down the line. Nice, nice. Well, I want to wrap this up here. Where can people find you in 2026? I know kind of you got your current clients, but you're still, you know, going to be involved in the industry, taking on new clients as you can, taking on new markets or new projects. But I guess like where can people find you and where are you going to be in 2026?
yeah. Gosh, there's a couple of events that I always try to make sure I make it to. Revelry is one that I'll make sure I always go to every year. BizCon is another that I'll go to just because it's like the one gathering. Everybody's there, so I get to see all of my industry friends. Um, what else? Oh, I'm headed to Ignite It next week. It'll be my first one, so I'm really excited to actually be able to sit in and learn from some of the panelists there, and see some of my Jersey friends in New York. I think those are the only ones I have, and there's a couple of other ones that I'm eyeing, like OCHBS, is always a good one. Unpacked, yeah. There's a couple more that I always have on my. Um,
Nice, nice. Well, thanks so much for your time, Mei Ling. If anybody has any questions on scaling brands and sales teams to new markets in a repeatable, profitable way, now you know who to reach out to. But thanks again for your time, Mei Ling. Have a good one.
Thanks, Raymond. It's nice catching up with you. Take care.
You as well. Bye.
Bye.